Now, originally, this tweet popped up on my feed, and if you are pretty familiar with South Park or a fan of South Park, you would probably or are well aware of the departure in regarding the character that Isaac Hayes played, and that is Chef. And if you're also well aware about the departure regarding the voice actor, including the biggest, just sourpuss of an ending to kill off a character in the most disrespectful way that Matt Baker and Trey Parker could ever think of in the episode, which led to a whole controversial feud regarding the fans of South Park and the community overall of how they felt after watching that episode. But now we know the full story being said from Isaac Hayes' son, Isaac Hayes III, in a full interview by the website Cracked. For over 14 years, people have speculated about why my father, Isaac Hayes, left South Park. I'm here to set the record straight. My dad did not quit South Park. Scientology did. After the episode Trapped in the Closet aired in 2005, my father suffered a stroke just a few months later that left him unable to speak or make decisions on his own. He was not in any condition to resign from anything. The truth is, someone else within his Scientology circle made that decision and quit the show for him. He loved being the voice of Chef. He loved the character. He loved connecting with fans. He would joke with people who recognized his voice, and he truly enjoyed being part of the show. The narrative that he quit because he was offended by the satire is not true. That was a cover story created by others. My father never got to speak for himself because his health robbed him of that chance. So now I am speaking for him. He did not leave South Park willingly. He was forced out by illness and by people who do not have his best interest at heart. This is for anyone who loves Chef. This is for anyone who admired my father's work. This is the truth about what really happened. Hear the full story on @Cracked Online. Do you know how your father came to play Chef? It was such a random thing for him at that point in his career. I know Matt and Trey had thought about who they could ask to play Chef, and they just reached out. They didn't think he would accept it, but he was like, okay, I'll do it. It was pretty simple. I thought it was cool because what typically happens with great success stories is you're just trying things. You don't know what's going to work, and before you know it, you put together something that's amazing, and then it becomes this part of the cultural zeitgeist, and everybody thinks it's this big master plan. But no. From your perspective, I'm curious what you think this meant to him to have this revival in an area completely different from his music. It gave him a second fan base. He's known primarily for his music, and that's extremely important. But it's funny because the older you get, you realize that most people always have different chapters, like a first, second, third act, or whatever. Like John Travolta, he was hot, he wasn't, and he was hot again. Or like Jason Bateman in the 1980s, and then he was gone, and in the 2000s, he came back and he's bigger than ever. There are those highs and lows, and for my dad, this was definitely an American pop culture high that he was a part of that was really powerful. South Park was pretty much an overnight phenomenon, and Chef was one of the very few sane positive characters on the show. How did your father feel about the show and its material? He tended to be the moral compass of the show, always helping the kids out. That's what I really liked about his character. They'd always come and ask him questions, and he'd always have the answers to these really uncomfortable things about masturbation and all kinds of stuff. My dad was comfortable with that, as opposed to sometimes being the gigolo of the town with all the ladies or whatever, which is also hilarious. That fit more into his persona or he was as an artist. So he understood that as part of his character, but my father was an educator and a very smart guy. So I think a lot of the stuff he would talk about, he probably knew or even had a deeper understanding of than what was conveyed in the script. But did he find the material funny, offensive, weird? Did it match his sensibility? It absolutely matched him. My father had an amazing sense of humor. He was a very cool guy. He was serious but didn't take himself too seriously. He was never personally bothered by the material at all. Again, it gave him a new legion of fans, and it helped connect those people with his music. Just in watching the shows, I don't ever think there was ever anything out of bounds. They definitely pushed barriers, don't get me twisted, but he understood that you're not supposed to take it so seriously. It's serious commentary not to be taken seriously, which is interesting. Did you watch the show at the time? Yeah, I watched the show. I was chef for Halloween one year, and I won a costume party. It was great because your dad's part of this cool show that everybody's talking about. I don't think people understand how powerful animation is to people. I did voiceover myself, I've done voiceovers for shows on Cartoon Network. Were you inspired by your dad's voice work? Someone just said, you got a great voice, so you should do voiceover. So I was like, all right, I'm going to try it. And it worked out pretty good. I was this character called the Brood Witch on Aqua Teen Hunger Force. And even that small character, I think I was on 3 episodes. There was a real connection that people have to shows that they love in animation. Chef had a lot of songs from South Park. Did your dad have a favorite? Chocolate Salty Balls was the hit. He was doing that in concert. He'd do that on the road or during a concert. Out of nowhere, he'd go, hey, everybody, have you seen my balls? They're big and salty and brown. My God. Getting to your dad's departure from the show, what was his reaction to Trapped in the Closet? So initially, the episode came out in November, and there was no reaction. There wasn't any upswell about that episode at all. It really wasn't a big deal at the time. That January in 2006, my dad had a stroke, and during the course of his recovery, I think that March, they re-aired the episode. When it re-aired, that's when Scientology got upset. At the time, my father was recovering from a stroke, literally learning how to talk, learning how to function. I visited my father. He was really struggling sometimes to even speak and say words. At the time, the people that were around him were largely Scientologists, his publicists and management. Those decisions about his involvement in the show, his leaving the show, were made by those people and not him. He would never quit that show. He loved the show and he was making a lot of money doing that show. So I take issue with the way those decisions were made on his behalf because it put him in a position to actually have to go on the road and tour before he was ready to tour. When did he start touring again? Probably less than a year afterwards because South Park was such a breadwinner. It was a great show and he was making money. So now that you don't have this income stream anymore, you have to find other ways to make income. Touring is a way to do that. Imagine you walk away from a gig and all you got to do is sit in front of a mic and talk, and to go back on the road and start learning how to play and sing and perform and travel and stay up late and flights and all that kind of stuff. I took issue with that. My dad loved Matt and Trey. He loved that character. He loved the show. He loved what it meant. He would have stayed involved all the way until right now. To this day, he would still be on the show. That's the part that frustrates me. I don't think Matt and Trey knew at the time, because even his own family, we were not always allowed to be in that inner circle. Anybody that has a celebrity parent, sometimes the core team around them, Scientology or not, can be a barrier to their family and personal relationships. My father was married at the time, so his wife was there. We entrusted her and she was fine. She was involved in Scientology, I think. I can't say that she was all the way. I won't say that she was involved, but I know that she was just there for him. So I felt comfortable that his wife was around. At least somebody that has his best interest in mind was around, but by no means those decisions were made on his own. He died in August 2008. Do you think him getting back on the road so quickly is what accelerated? Yes. 100%. And part of what I recall from Scientology is they weren't big on modern medicine. They were more in holistic things. So even the medication that he was probably supposed to be taking, he probably wasn't taking. All of those factors, you know what I'm saying? Which is why you have to be the biggest advocate for your health. My father was very big on holistic medicine, Jesus, and things like that. But at the time, you have to be real and understanding the science of what's going on. Whether it could be your blood pressure, your heart, your kidneys. To this day, I think this had a major effect on me and how I view my health. Did he ever talk to you about leaving South Park? No, we never had a conversation about it. Never. What do you think about Matt and Trey's reaction? Even as a fan, the episode where Chef dies is very upsetting, so I'm curious how you feel about it. Emotions were high at the time, and I think the way they handled it had to do more with Scientology than my dad. That was the more of a big F you to those guys as opposed to my father. But he was caught in that, and it wasn't a great way to end the character. You could tell a lot of thought wasn't put into it. It didn't really make sense. Even if the character was going to exit, it didn't make sense how the character exited. What made you not talk about this until the Hollywood Reporter piece, and what made you want to talk about it then? Because after my dad's passing, you're learning more and more. But again, these people that are always around him all the time were very guarded. It was weird. At the time, I'm young and I'm just concerned about my dad. Once I knew that he would be okay, I just let the chorus do what it does. My dad was still a person who acted and still performed outside of South Park. He still was doing movies. He still was doing other things. So I didn't really talk about it. Plus, it's not my business, it's my father's business, and that's how he was handling his business. What made you tell the Hollywood Reporter recorded at the time in 2016 because it was important for my dad's legacy, for people to understand what that show meant to him and what the fans of that show meant to him. That was more important than whatever the reason was for him leaving the show or people quitting on his behalf. I just felt it was important for people to know that he would never do that, just setting the record straight, because why would he do that? It doesn't make sense. That they make fun of everybody on the show. Why would he all of a sudden get offended about something that has nothing to do with his character and then quit? That didn't make no sense. After the interview, did anybody from the church reach out to you? No, I haven't had any connection with anybody from Scientology since before my father passed away. Did Matt and Trey ever reached out to you about what you said? No, I think they made a statement about how once they heard what I said, they were like, quote, okay, I think that makes a little bit of sense, and they understood it better. With the dust of that time now having settled, what do you think about Chef as a part of his legacy today? It's still a huge part. I mean, people still talk about that to this day. I saw this Reddit thread the other day where people were saying that they miss Chef and his parents. Here's a Reddit post shown here. Reading the thread, it says you should come on as Chef's son. Would you want to do something like that? I'm always open to that for sure. I mean, I'm a voice actor. My father and I have similar voices. Anything's possible. I'm open to the idea, but I would think even more along the lines of with technology, with AI, that Chef himself could come back. And that is the interview with Isaac Hayes III, also known as Isaac Hayes' son, is setting the record straight that Isaac Hayes himself, the singer and the voice actor, did not get offended from the material that was put on the show, but in fact had a stroke and wasn't able to set the record straight because of the publicists, overall the people that work for him or that just have a grudge with him, to make up these lies. He couldn't speak on his behalf due to the stroke, which was a disadvantage to respond to these claims made by people that don't know him or that don't know him very well about how he portrayed himself to the public as a character in the one of the most iconic American comedy shows, and that's South Park. And it's sad, really, because imagine you being an iconic voice actor that makes some risky, offensive jokes, and you love the humor. You unfortunately have a stroke, which led to you not being able to speak due to the stroke. And then you can't speak on your behalf, and your publicist is speaking for you, which is also a disadvantage. And the fact that it took 14 years, because, and in fairness, when you lose somebody that close, when you lose your father, your mother, and you were that close to them, and on top of that, they're a celebrity. It really, it's a lot to take in, and also speak on his behalf because he's unfortunately not able to like respond to these claims and allegations regarding himself. But I'm happy that we finally got the answer, and I'm very sorry for Isaac Hayes III that has to go through this pain of this sudden death, unfortunately, from his father. And I really hope that he's doing okay. I hope he's doing well. And I really hope that this becomes widespread. I mean, the tweet itself has over 170,000 likes, which is already a plus. But with all that aside, though, I'm just happy that I get to know that it wasn't because he was offended. He indeed loved the show, loved being part of the show. It's just that the stroke led him to not being able to respond on his behalf. So with all that being said, for this video, that's all I gotta say. If you guys did enjoy, leave a like, subscribe, comment down what you think about the video. I'll leave the tweak in the description. I also have a Patreon that's also linked in the description. This is Wolf Gray. Peace.